thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and the fact that you're making such a difference in South Africa. I mean, for one, congratulations on
Thank
qualifying.
you.
And I saw the your routine that you did in August for everyone in South Africa. It's fabulous.
Thank you.
So tell me really about your story, because I think what's going to be most interesting for our audience is to understand how gymnastics in South Africa. Let's start with your story about how you started gymnastics.
Okay, so I started gymnastics at the age of 6. So that was like 12 years ago. I'm 19, 13. Yeah, so it's been a long journey, but I started because I was a very busy kid. I think this is probably every gymnast starting story. But yeah, I could not sit still. You know, my parents always told me what a pain I was to them and what a hazard I was to myself if I was not doing self-taught flips off my bed or into the pool. You know, it was an absolute disaster, of which I think they were just worried about my safety a lot of the time. And coming from the background that my parents did, you know, they came from a very small community and a very small town, and they didn't, also as people of color, they didn't even know what gymnastics was. You know, gymnastics in South Africa is not, it's one of the smallest sporting codes. So it was already such, you know, a small sport that nobody really knew about, and they didn't really know about it. So we got exposed to it through a few of my parents' friends, because they had a daughter that was in gymnastics. So they said to my parents, take her, you know, even if it's just to redirect my energy, you know, in a positive way, just to burn energy after school. I would think I was really young at that time, but it started off as something to do after school, more of a hobby, just to not be a hazard to myself. And like, that's what it started as. But you know, as time progressed and I started doing it more, I started going more days in a week. And for me, I always felt like gymnastics was, it came very near me, going to training at that time 4 or 5 times a week. Like, I loved it. It didn't feel like work or effort. You know, I absolutely, it was the best part of my week was my training. You know, I thought it was the most fun in the world. And before I knew it, I was then put into competitive gymnastics and elite, and I was moving through the levels. I was then became a junior gymnast, and then I was a senior Olympic gymnast. And along the way, I developed all these big goals and saw so much potential for myself. So that is where my story started.
Well, you know, the thing is, so let's talk about your Olympic qualifier, because that's amazing. So first, how did bars become your best event? You know, because I saw the routine, it was really interesting and also very creative, especially I love your dismount. But tell us how bars became your favorite event.
I get that a lot. I don't know, like, for me, I think about my dismount. For me, I'm like, it's such, in my head, it's such a basic dismount, and everyone is like, oh, it is so creative. You know, it's such a, but I guess, I mean, it's not very common. People don't really do forward twisting off bar, you know, let alone like about a 1.5 twist. But yeah, so when I obviously started gymnastics and started into the high performance stages, it was around in, I think, level 6 high performance in our levels, where I first, I think, started seeing my own natural ability for bar. Bar was, again, you know, the one apparatus where it felt effortless for me, you know, to be able to generate swing and to swing with the swing of the bar. It felt so natural. I learned things and picked up concepts and the techniques very quickly. I, you know, progressed with learning skills very quickly, and it always just felt easy for me. Not, I mean, easy like it's nothing, but in comparison to all my other apps, you know, there was a big difference. I mean, I looked at Beam, which I can safely say was my arch enemy from the beginning. From day one, we did not get off on a very good foot. But yeah, so bar, on the other hand, was the total opposite, where I would go to every competition, and not only did I not even stress about it, you know, I felt like I was never nervous for bar. It was always just I felt like I was winging it. And then I always do it so well, and whereas beam was another story. I would stress my life out and still have, 5 falls, and it was a disaster. But so bar, that's how it kind of started. And by the time I was like in junior Olympic, I started noticing that I was a bit more ahead of everyone on bar in terms of what my routine was. I had Shaposh, and so which is like a transitioning skill, one of the bigger transitioning skills, and a release a lot quicker than the rest of my teammates did, and I started putting in a lot more difficulty into my bar routine before everyone else did, and built that into my routine. And that's how I think, I obviously became what I am on bar and got the routine that I did. And I started winning national title every year on bar as a junior and then as a senior. And then I won my first African championship title at the African Championships on bar as my first title as a junior. So I won the junior African Championship title on bar in 2016. And then, so we have it every 2 years, the African Championships. And then in 2018, I was a senior and then won it again. So that was, a really big achievement. And then went on in 2019 to then win my first ever international medal, let alone a gold medal on bar at the Hungary Challenge World Cup, which was incredible for me. It was definitely one of the biggest moments and biggest highlights of my career. It was very unforeseen, not only for myself, but I think for everyone. My mom said to me, it's not to doubt you or anything, but like, we did not see that coming, and I was like, no, neither did I. I mean, after, because I qualified in 4th, and the goals were quite strong. And I remember after the qualification, because we had one of our South African judges go, and she said to me, even along with some of the other countries' judges, had told her that I can really push my way into 3rd position in the final if I'm lucky, if I can squeeze a little there and point my toes a little harder there, I can wiggle my way into a 3rd place. So that was as high as my expectation went. And also for me, my biggest goal of that competition was just to make a final on bar. That's where it stopped. I mean, I didn't really, have anything further than that. So after qualification, I was already more than happy. I qualified in 4th. Wow, I was like, oh, this is amazing, and then they told me I could potentially get a bronze medal. And I remember that competition. Because obviously they draw which position, it's, I think, anonymous draw of which position you then go in the final. And I was drawn 7th out of the 8 goals, which is absolutely horrible to go last. Because you're a nervous wreck. You have to wait for everyone's routines. You don't get, I think, a 30-second warm up. You have to wait and just kind of pray that, your experience is going to really come through here. And there I was up 7th, and I really performed the routine of my life, with a lot of nerves and stress. But I think also going in with the mindset of, for me, I was going into the final competition, it felt very, like I said, like that was just the cherry on top of the cake. I really felt like I'd achieved my goals. So my main objective was just to go and really enjoy the moment, be in the moment, have fun, and I nailed the routine of my life with a stuck dead dismount. I did not even step for like one of the first times. I always like hop on that thing, and then I stuck dead, and then my score came out and I was the highest so far. And there's one more goal to go, and I remember there's this picture that's on my Instagram. It's of me and my coach where I landed, and then she gives me a high five and she hugs me. And there's this moment where we exchange, and she just looks at me, and I remember her saying to me, like, I think you could have done it. And we just looked at each other, and it was just this, it was an incredible moment, and then the girl after me went, and I think she even had a fall. I don't actually even remember anything after that, but I think she could have fallen. Okay. And there was, and then a moment later, I was standing on the first podium on an international stage for the first time hearing my country's anthem play. It was a historic moment, not only for my country, but for me, for me, my club, my coach. It was a really big and emotional moment. I remember standing there I think I was in complete shock. I just stood there with a smile on my face, but my teammates and my coach, they were crying their eyes out. And I was just smiling. But yeah, so that's where we're at now.
No, that sounds very exciting. I love hearing that story because it's just inspirational. I mean, all of your hard work came together. And that's what I think people don't understand when it all comes together and you work. It's not like you had work to do this, but when it comes together at that moment and things come around, it's worth all the work, right? It's worth all of the hard work. And I know you went through like a lot of injuries. I mean, that's a really important thing, especially as we tell young people to get through, because you kind of don't have control. But I want to ask you, who were people that you looked up to? There weren't a lot of athletes of color there. Were there any athletes that you looked up to as a younger gymnast or that inspired you?
Yes, so within my gym there was a gymnast. Her name was Claudia Cummins. So she was one of the senior gymnasts, and she qualified for the 2016 Olympic Games through the African Birth Continental qualification. But then SASCOC didn't end up sending her. We just had this recurring thing. I don't even know the like politics around that, but where for it happened the previous year too. I think was I think in 2008 or 12, I could be lying, but like it also happened with another gymnast where she qualified through the African Birth Continental qualification and SASCOC just didn't send them. So she was the one, Claudia was the one gymnast I looked up to. She was a very inspirational gymnast, and also not only such a good gymnast, but a very good person. You know, she was really a good person for us to look up to, as with her personality and I think just her characteristics. She, you know, a very fierce young woman, and also was very fierce about chasing her goals, you know, and so that was someone I looked up to. And internationally, as I think I got older, someone that I also really looked up to was a gymnast called Elizabeth Seitz. So she's from the German national team. And within the years 2018 and 2019, I got the opportunity, me and my teammate slash best friend, we got the opportunity to travel to Germany about 3 times within those 2 years, where we trained with their national team for a week. And she was one of the gymnasts we trained with. And for me, I think there was just something about her. She also, in the one camp we spoke, and just telling us how she went through multiple, both of her feet, like injuries, where she had to go for like recurring surgeries, but every time, you know, she came back stronger. She won a world medal on bar. She's also very good on bar. I think that's also why. But yeah, so I think just how resilient she was. And there was a camp where we came, and it was just after she was getting back from surgery, you know, and like just to see her dedication in the gym and her commitment to, yes, she wasn't in full training, you know, she was nowhere close to that, but, you know, training her upper body and still everything else she was putting in despite that, you know. So I think that for me was really inspiring to see. And I felt like I saw a lot of similarity in myself in her, you know, with myself, of how also I had to overcome so many injuries and setbacks, and that really inspired me.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Now, how are you doing? Because there was another setback and the postponement, of course, of the Tokyo Olympics and the pandemic. So a couple questions is how's your training going now, and how did you manage yourself through this challenging time?
So currently my training is going really well. At the end of last year, we were put back into our national level 3 lockdown, which is like moderate restrictions. It's not too bad, but the one thing that I was very grateful for was that my gymnastics training was not affected. So I was able to carry on training as normal, and obviously just being a lot more cautious with our, you know, wearing masks and sanitizing and all of that and social distancing. But I was able to train, and I was very grateful for that after what we had last year when we were in our level 5 lockdown for about almost 4 months, and I was not able to train for that entire time, which was one of the worst times I can definitely say in my career. You know, it was really challenging. Not once in my career had I ever taken even more than 2 weeks off in December. You know, that was when we were lucky. On a December, we would get maybe 2 weeks. So getting basically 4 months, you know, and which I remember going into it, it was supposed to be a 3-week lockdown. That's what our president actually told us. And 3 weeks turned into a month, which turned into 2 and then 3. And it felt like my dreams are slowly slipping away, if I could say that. I'd done the hard part, which was qualifying for the Olympic Games. That for me was the hardest part, was qualifying and getting in. And I did that. And now this had to come, and I just felt like, I think, not also knowing what was happening with the Olympics, because it was a point where we weren't sure what was going to happen. Was it going to go ahead? Was it going to get postponed? What was going to happen? So that uncertainty it ate at me for a while. It was really hard to stay on top of it all, not only physically being at home and not being able to be in the gym, but also mentally, to keep my mental health and myself in good mental shape, not being in the gym every day, which was really challenging. But I can, definitely say that I came back from that really strong once again. And, right now I'm doing really well.
That's great. Yeah, I think people don't understand how challenging it is. I mean, to be an elite athlete, and how important timing is, and how important conditioning it is, and how, that whole works. But everybody was doing that around the world. But it is, like you said, not just physically, but the mental and emotional challenges of waiting. I don't think people always look at that when they look at athletes. So tell me a little bit, or tell our audience about pretty much gymnastics in South Africa. For many of our folks, we don't know many South African athletes. I mean, for one, you're traveling to go internationally and things like that requires a little bit more when you just
Yeah,
a tad.
yeah.
Yeah. Just the travel on itself. But we're kind of curious because we're coming through, we've been through, in America, a really big reckoning, especially this last year, in realizing the struggle that Black Americans have been going through and the challenges. And the thing is that South Africa has its own history as well with this, and coming out and coming above that. So being the first athlete of color to qualify for the Olympics, how do you feel as far as being, what you're setting an example? Like you said, you had your athlete that you looked up to, but they're not, probably now a lot of gymnasts that are looking up to you. And are there still quite a few of athletes of color in South Africa? Because you said it's a small sport.
Yeah, so it is a very small sport, and one of the smallest sporting codes, but we're trying to change that, me and many other girls. But yeah, there is, from the gym that I come from, so my gym's called Johannesburg Gymnastics Center. We are currently one of the top clubs in the country, and we have a lot of gymnasts of color actually coming up. We are predominantly actually like gymnast of color gym. There's a lot of gymnasts of color in general there. So there is a lot more, in the pipeline, not only me, and there's a lot of upcoming talent that we can see, and a lot of gymnasts that do look up to us. So, it's hard because, like you say, one of the biggest, like you said, one of the biggest challenges is the traveling. I think nobody actually understands, the difference where, in European countries, they can go to this World Cup and this World Cup because it's a drive and a 1-2 hour drive away, and then, or you just take a 2-3 hour flight and you're there. Not with us, we right at the bottom of Africa, and and for us to get to a country like France, you have to take 2 connecting flights, which both 9 and 8 hours each, and it's a day of traveling already out, and then you have to have a day of recovery when you get back. And it's, to not even speak about the financial, troubles that go with that, because gymnastics being such a small sport in the country, and not such a recognized sport in our country, it's not as supported and not as funded. So for us, it's only as senior gymnasts now, when we reach this level, where you start to, I want to say, receive a lot more support, and, in inverted commas, reap the rewards. Like coming up as a gymnast, I mean, I knew I came up in the sport with a single mother, and it was not easy. There had to be a lot of financial sacrifice because there's not a lot of support and funding that helps us. And gymnastics, like you said, it's a very expensive sport. It requires a lot, and there's a lot of unseen costs that people don't even know about, let alone, okay, yeah, you're traveling and your leotards, but like your gym fees every month, the chalk that we have to pay for, your tracksuits, your competition fees, your physio, your health, your things that you need to eat, your transport to gym. There's a lot of things that have to go into getting us where we are today, where we had to do basically with our parents and our clubs, and our federation. Besides that, there was not much help, and we did a lot of fundraising coming up. Our parents would host, they had a fundraising committee where every month they had to host events, and get in that money so that that would go to helping us when we travel. Because like I said, when we travel, it's very costly, and then they have to, usually that's where most of our funding would come from, was from fundraising, and then the rest we would have to make a plan for, which is really hard because that's how I believe a lot of the talent falls out along the way. There's so much talent in our country, and especially you see it in the younger girls. There's so many younger girls that are so talented but fall out along the way because their parents can't cope or can't handle it, and like I said, there's not a lot of help when you're at that age. It's only really now when you're a senior gymnast that you'll get fully sponsored when you go to world championships, and then they will fully take care of all flight costs and accommodation. But it wasn't previously like that, coming up, which is, I think that's when you need it the most, is when you're getting there. You need that help to get to where we are. So there's a lot of challenges surrounding gymnastics in South Africa, and we need a lot of financial support, but also I think companies, and they want to see like results, bigger results than we are giving. But we also, yes, we are climbing up in the ranks, but in order to get, there, we need better equipment and more facilities. And with that, we need funding, but it's just, I feel like the cycle that is not being filled somewhere, which is really hard. But despite that, I think I'm proud to say that despite the circumstances and, having a small gym, but we have, even with what we've had, and I do believe we've still had everything we needed. And I'm glad I can say that, even with minimal, in inverted commas, and not what everyone else has, we are able to still do what we can do, and produce such not only amazing gymnasts for our country, but amazing people.
Oh, that's lovely. And I think you really said a lot, because a lot of the work that we do a lot of the fundraising to help pay for the gymnastics and things like that. But I think what you really talked about was, besides developing good gymnasts, you said good people. So talk about a little bit, because that's what we're always telling people. I mean, gymnastics is great and we love it. But I think what we really, for our foundation, is really to teach the kids the work ethic, right? To appreciate working hard, to learn to be a good teammate, and to learn a loss. If you go to competition, you're not gonna win all the time. So what are the things when you talk about becoming a good person through gymnastics? What has it done for your life?
It's done, and it's done a lot. I can definitely say gymnastics has shaped me into the person that I am today, and has not only made me the gymnast that I am, but definitely the person that I am. Besides the discipline and the work ethic, it's taught me, that you had to, was a lot of discipline coming up, time management. When I was still in school, you had to balance that. We, as even though we elite gymnasts, we don't necessarily, we didn't have the preference of going like homeschooling. So if I was put in a public school, I had to arrange with teachers, to kind of make it work. My coach and my mom had to have meetings with my principal to say that, like, this is what's happening. I'm currently trying to go for the Olympic Games, that they need to kind of be accommodating, and there's going to be some Fridays where I'm not going to be able to go to school because I'm competing, or a few days in the week where I'm going to come late because I have morning training, and that we're going to just have to make it work. There was just, it was there was a lot of challenges around that. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I like really blacked out halfway through that question.
No, well, it's basically you're talking about, it's fine, because there's a lot. I mean, there is a lot. You're talking about the challenges you had to do to make it happen and what gymnastics gave you in your life besides going through those challenges. I got it, girl.
Sorry, I literally just hit that. Yeah, but like you said, one of the other things that I think stuck out for me was also the sportsmanship. That is a big lesson you learn in gymnastics, is you are not going to win every time. You are going to, I can bet you'll probably have a lot more losses than you're going to have wins, and you being in the groups that we are, these are groups that we come from the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old. We grew up with the girls that we train with, and we are all so close, and we're such a close-knit group and family that it's so much more than just teammates. We sisters, and it's a thing where you go to competition, and yes, when we're in the competition arena, we're teammates now. Now we're competing all for those 3 spots. But when it's those 3 girls that get it, we're all happy for them, because we know how hard we've all worked at the gym, so it's always a team effort. One thing I always felt was, after I qualified for the Olympic Games, I didn't feel like it was only my qualification. I knew how hard we'd all been working, and how hard my coach had worked year after year to try and get a gymnast to the Olympic Games. So coming back, knowing that I'd qualified, it didn't only feel like it was my qualification, it was everyone's qualification. We all done it. We all worked to get there. So when we came back, we all celebrated it, and it was, me and my biggest competitor / teammate / she's my best friend. Her name's Naveen. She was the gymnast at the World Championships that finished I think it was 0.01 after me, sorry. And she was that close to having the Olympic qualification herself, because it was one per country, so it was a really hard situation where, we're best friends, but we're the biggest of competitors, and she missed the qualification, but I qualified, and it's a hard situation because I was over the moon, but obviously she was devastated. But at the same time, once we came home, we can still say, well done, we congratulate each other, and we're still happy for each other. And like now, there's another qualification coming up where she has an opportunity. They're taking the top 2 girls in Africa, and I'm rooting for her as hard as it comes. My qualification is done, but now we focus on the rest of them. And I think that's another big lesson that it has definitely taught me, is sportsmanship, and how close, to be to one another, and how hard to root for one another and support each other.
Now, I appreciate it, because I think it's really important just for those listening, but especially young gymnasts, to understand that, to know that it's really important. But that last story you gave was really, it works at your heart, right? And that gymnastics can be that close, that, to winning or being able to do this. I do wish your teammate the best of luck in the upcoming qualifying, and I'm sure you are rooting too. So is there anything you can just overall, your experience in gymnastics, or what you want to say to young people about going for it in the sport that you love, or going for what you feel? You said what gymnastics has done for you, but what are you looking for as you look back at your career? What has been, you talked about a lot of work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of travel. So much. What would you say about gymnastics overall and what it does for youth?
I definitely think gymnastics is a very valuable sport.
Oh, let's do this one again. I think you're losing it a little bit.
Personally, I think it's just, but even if you're not set out to be an elite Olympic gymnast, I think very good. It teaches you such good fundamentals, and basics of strength and flexibility and agility that can help you in other sports that I would, definitely recommend. So I do believe that gymnastics, like I said, besides the strength and all of the good physical qualities it has given me, it's definitely taught me things like discipline, time management, work ethic, sportsmanship, and how to, one of the biggest things, resilience, to keep at it and work through disappointment. And, for me, my biggest thing was to keep my eye on the goal. That was, and even, yes, it was always the Olympic Games, but there was a point where it felt very far-fetched. It felt very out of reach. It was always a long-term goal. And in that sense, what we did was we had short-term goals. You always have something that you're working towards. If it's the World Championships, we work for those few months for the World Champs. And once that's done, you get a new goal and you work towards that. You break it down. And that's what I think it is. It's, you need to know what your goal is and keep your eye on that. There's going to be a lot that's going to fall in your way, and you're going to fall here and there, but you also need to keep getting up and, keep going for it. You can do it, man. That's what I think.
I think that's a perfect way to finish up because it is true. It's what we want to tell. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I love learning about your story. You have really wonderful energy and you're so gracious to others as well. So I'm sure that's going to serve you well. And I'm just wishing you all the best moving forward. We're here. And when you come on one of your big trips, when you come to the US, I hope you come to New York and you come see us.
I'd love to. I was there last year in 2014 for a Disneyland competition, and I was young, so it was amazing. But I'd definitely love to come back. I hope I can soon.
I hope so too. Thank you so much. We so appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, definitely. Take good care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.